And we are back. Episode number 112 of Black and a Half.
112. Woo!
I'm Jessi Milestone.
I'm Samantha Rund.
And we are your hosts for the longest running comedy podcast in Seattle, probably. This is a fun episode.
Yeah.
Samantha has been bringing in her. She's got connections. So, right. I mean, she doesn't like to brag.
That is true.
She's got some people. So our guest today, they're off streaming right now on something else. Is Jessi Milestone. You met her as a comic, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Another comic. She's a streamer. She streams some shows on YouTube, and also she has a big Twitter following on there. A tweeter follow. She's a head tweet. She's a head tweeter. I believe that's the technical term. No? Okay. It was a fun episode. We got a little side railed. We talked about the corona affecting sports, how that's going to do that. Joe Biden's choosing his running mate next week. We made some guesses. We got into a big daily discussion in anti-Semitism in the United States.
I found it very informative. She definitely told me some things that I didn't know because, as we all know, I do not watch the news a ton compared to Silas, for example.
Yeah. It was interesting hearing her side, and I wanted to definitely hear that. I could have talked about that a lot more. I have some very complicated feelings on the whole thing. Like I said, I don't talk about it much, but I liked hearing what she had to say. I didn't want to get into. I was gonna because I'm also like a fact checker. So when somebody says something, I pull up, well, what did she actually say? So I was pulling up stuff and reading. So listen to the discussion. I think it's really interesting to hear what she had to say. We talked about it happened because I mentioned my love of AOC, and then brought into about the squad. If you follow politics, the squad in Congress, and Ilhan Omar's statements in the past. So that was interesting. And then she answered the 7 questions. Oh, I did movie reviews. We did a movie review of 2 films, Banana Split and My Spy. So a couple there. Are you going to see either of those based off of my review? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I will. I think I'm more in a My Spy sort of mood, but I think I could go for either. Right now, what I started watching was the Jeffrey Epstein series on the documentary. I know I couldn't bring myself to watch it, but then I started watching it today. Just, of course, it's horrible. It's absolutely horrible. But there's so many different character types in it that I do sometimes just watch things for the psychology and character study of it. But of course, it's a deplorable human. And then just the craziness of power structures and stuff like that. I find it fascinating and horrifying. Yeah. So I'm just saying, I definitely actually so far, I think I'm 3 episodes in. I would recommend watching it if you're prepared to watch it.
I just don't know that I can get in the mental space to watch it. That's what I've been.
Well, yeah, that's why I avoided it. It was recommended to me to watch it, because I like watching some of these documentaries and things. It was because I was watching Cults and Extreme Beliefs.
Do you want to get depressed? Do you want to get depressed?
Wait, what?
So they were when they pitched it to you, were they like, Samantha, you want to get real depressed?
Well, no, it was from somebody who also watches documentaries and stuff on serial killers and things like that. And so they recommended it to me, and they're like, it might be a little bit hard for you to watch, but I think you would want to watch it. And there's this is a little heavy for our intro, but there's
I know.
You could cut this out, cut it off.
No.
But there's the two. I mean, if I'm watching it from the super open, empathetic feeling place, it's of course it's super hard to watch things like that. But if I'm watching it from a sort of academic learning and let's see the power structures in place. Let's see the personality types. Let's see the red flags. Let's see you know what I mean? From that sort of, it's a little bit more like removed from my chakras. I don't know. It's if I'm able to be in that space, I find it very interesting. And there's just a lot of information I didn't know, about it.
That's cool. Well,
yeah.
I'll try to stomach one episode.
Yeah, but I mean, it's right now. Don't watch it seriously. Like now, our job is to stay home, try to be happy, don't hurt other people, take care of ourselves and our families.
I might be able to handle it. I've started taking CBD, so who knows? I can do anything. My anxiety's gone. It's my endorsement of CBD. Hey folks, you like this episode? You like this show? If you could go to iTunes and give us a review, even if you don't listen on iTunes, still do it. iTunes doesn't even exist anymore, actually. I'll say Apple Podcasts. Go there and review us. Leave 5-star. Appreciate it. And share and rate. Another way, if you like the show, want to be a good supporter, you can become a Patreon member of the show. You go to Patreon.com, that's Patreon.com /black_and_a_half and become a Patreon member, like Stephen Ward, our founding member, or Tara Widener. She's also a Patreon at the appropriate level. Thus, I say her name. And you can have your name
said. What an honor, Silas. What not?
Yes.
But seriously, thank you for your support. It does mean a lot to us.
Yeah, it does. And then, of course, the show, again, brought to you in part by real estate. If you are in the Seattle, Washington area and looking to buy or sell a home, please visit Silas Rund and I with Skyline Properties at silasgetsreal.com, or you can just send me an email, silas@blackandahaf.com. If you listen to the show, you know that I'm a real estate agent in my day job until this takes off, until you've left enough reviews. If you're interested in my house, you can go there and what you do, you get a house and you also support this program by utilizing law. And also, Samantha, it's brought to you by...
Yes, Beyond Technique Coaching. Thank you, Silas. So what Beyond Technique Coaching is all about is using performance skills to enhance your life. So if you're a performer or non-performer, it's all about empowering you in voice, body, and mind. You could email me about that at beyondtechniquecoaching@gmail.com, or go to the Beyond Technique Coaching website or Instagram or Facebook. Yes, if you have questions, let me know.
It's not just technique.
You're right. It's moving beyond it. It really is. Because there's all sorts of surprising ways that that it's helped to improve and inform my life. And I was actually thinking of making a short video about a very surprising way being a performer helps me out.
Do it. Yeah.
You guys, I'm gonna drop something.
She's gonna drop it.
And it's about my MRI. It was a surprising connection I never saw coming. Maybe it'll help you out.
Don't spoil. And then it's we're going to take a moment to highlight a product.
Yes. This
is a new thing that we gotta help out those who help us. And our friend, we have very talented friends. Do you know that?
Yeah. Thanks, Silas, for that. Because I wanted to give a special shout out to Nova Dobrev. I'm sure hoping I'm pronouncing your name right. Sorry if I'm not Nova, but it's NovaDobrev. And the reason I'm giving her a shout out is she's artist and she is making masks for your safety and so that you can also mask up in style. I wanted to give her, she didn't ask, but I told her, she didn't ask. I said, Nova, can I talk about your masks on the podcast? I have several of her masks. The one that I have now is color coordinated with my top. You can see on the, if you go on the YouTube version of this. But anyway, it has like a really nice fabric in the front. It is actually nice and thick, but still breathable. Yeah. And then on the other side, it's nice and soft. And inside, this is the QVC portion of the show. Yeah. inside you can actually put a filter, but she has so many different colors. And for those of you on YouTube with your special treat,
you can watch this on YouTube.
You can
now,
see,
so, yeah.
and it actually will have her. Let's see. She has all these different like colors that she's using right now. And you can find her, message her on Instagram at Nova Meow Meow. That's right, the cat sound. Nova Meow Meow, or at Facebook, like I spelled out her name, right? Yeah, so just like to, help some people out.
Let me explain for a second, Samantha, how much of a nerd I am. Okay. When you told me your friend is making masks in the middle of a pandemic, mind you, my mind did not go to masks to save me from the said pandemic. I was like, oh, she makes like theater masks. Oh, I wonder what kind of commedia dell'arte mask she's showing me tonight. Well, until you literally mentioned the pandemic, and started to pull the mask out, I have not thought you were talking about any other kind of mask other than like a going to a ball kind of mask. That's happened
to me a few times with people saying mask and me taking the wrong way. But let me just tell you, I was at physical. I know, and this is the most I talk during the episode, you guys. You'll see. Right. I'm getting it all out now. No, I was at physical therapy the other day for my back still, and I normally wear a pink mask because I'm classy like that, right? But it happened to match my shirt, and everybody thought I did it on purpose, and they acted like I was a celebrity, which you guys can help me to become by your likes and votes and all that, right? But it was actually so delightful. People's faces were lighting up, even men, like old men, and they were so happy, like, oh, you match. So anyway.
That's great. I'm a nerd. I just feel like an idiot, but it's fine. That's the way
now
I roll.
I need to get my hands on a commedia dell'arte mask now for you.
Okay, so here we are, folks. Hope you enjoy it. Black and a Half, the podcast, episode number 112, Jessi Milestone and Finding the Center.
Stand by to receive our transmission.
On that, and then at the end, I have to do 30 seconds of silence for room tone, and then we do the intro.
Nice. When I was reading it, I thought today, like, 30 seconds of silence for what? What are we having 30 seconds of silence for now? I'm like, oh, right, the room tone. Okay.
Yeah, I should have put
something.
I'm trying to be better.
No, it's good. I'm just saying, like, with everything in the news right now, it's like, oh no, what's this segment about? Like,
that would be the worst podcast segment at all. 30 seconds of silence.
Oh my God, that'd be hilarious.
Hit 30. Hit 30 right there.
Every single freaking.
How many of you honored the 30 seconds? How many of you skipped? This isn't an ad for Waffle King. You have to listen to this.
Listen to the silence. Wasn't there the famous symphony? I can't remember what it was called. It was like, but it was the number of it was how long it was, and it was just silence.
Really? That does sound familiar. I love that. That's like,
it's kind of beautiful.
That reminds me of, I think, in Proof, like the physicists or whatever. They did that. There was like there's a song that they were going to play. And what they called the song, it was silent.
Wait, did they make Proof into a musical?
They made it into a movie. So it was a band that was playing.
Oh, the band, right.
Yeah.
I remember the band.
I remember this only because I watched it like.
I was like, wait, why are there songs in Proof now? And I'm like, oh, okay, right. The guy with his math band and all that weird shit, yeah.
Do you remember, were either of you were, I know my co-host was a theater person. Jessi, were you a theater person at all?
I mean, like, I grew up, doing acting and film and theater and stuff like that. I studied theater, yes.
Do you remember a play that was about a blank canvas? And, like, art. People... Is that what it is? I should have guessed that. Art.
I think that's what it was called. I can make
it probably was called Art.
It sounds
the easiest damn title to think of.
Listen, I felt that was a real win for me, having that memory. So
it's a blank canvas, and they put it up, and the people are fighting in the play about whether that is art or not. So it reminds me of that. Every field has its own version of silence. Is it art? It's the lack of.
The absence of it. Well, black is a color. Well, I mean, black light is considered, the lack of light is considered an absolute artistic choice when you talk about lighting things. So why wouldn't the absence of other things be the same? I know it is an interesting debate. It is definitely an interesting debate. It's art.
Yep.
You're right. Oh, she wins.
Thank you. Thank you.
Of course she did. She's a, what did he call you the other day? You were a virtuoso? No,
I thank you. I'll take it.
Was that it?
I wasn't. My ears are burning.
That wasn't you. So some of you listening know that this is now going on YouTube, right? So a few days after podcast, it goes on YouTube. So those of you, if you're just listening, you do want to check out the YouTube of this, because Jessi has the best background that we've ever had in this. I love the Star Wars figures.
Oh yeah,
they're all
Star Wars guys,
and all original trilogy.
Of course. So fun fact about that.
Yeah.
I was actually gifted with Force Awakens decals prior to that movie coming out, and I had put those up in my bathroom then. And I, to make a really long story short, am not a fan of the Disney Star Wars movies. But to make it slightly longer, I built my YouTube channel on not being a fan of the Disney Star Wars movies. So I ultimately swapped them out with the original figures because,
Well, I think no matter how wrong or right you are about the new trilogy, there's a classicness to those characters. There's an iconicness that I just think you take away. The Yoda is the big controversy. I don't know, big controversy. I have a fit about it. I like the puppet Yoda.
Yeah.
Puppet Yoda, not CGI Yoda. Like, I liked, whenever I see the CGI, I'm like, that's not real Yoda.
Sure.
Real Yoda is a puppet.
I agree that the puppet is 100 times better. The things I will say to CGI Yoda's credit is that it's still Frank Oz, as long as we're talking about, prequel Yoda, not like baby Yoda.
Yeah.
It's still Frank Oz, and I do like that they did the sword fight with him. There's a couple of the sword fights, the lightsaber battles that he has in 2 and 3, and you can't do that with a puppet. But other than that, I'm with you 100%. Puppet Yoda is just functionally, objectively better.
I don't know if is it Sesame Street that has trained us to accept puppets as people?
Probably.
Basically. Because between the
Muppets,
I have no problem watching the Muppets or Avenue Q and accepting completely that puppets are just as, they have the rights that we have. They should, it's just, it's a puppet. I completely accept that more than I will a CGI or a robot or anything. Like a puppet, I'm just like, a puppet.
It's something you can see and touch and hold. It is real in the classic sense, which no longer really means anything in our digital age, but it is real in an older sense of the word. I wonder, actually, it's an interesting point that you bring up, though. I wonder if kids these days, like the next generation, that Gen Z that really never lived in a world without technology, are they going to have a different perception of what is real? Because so many of these things that are just ideas that didn't exist for us 10 years ago or more, when we were children too, growing up, 20 years ago, whatever, if some of those things, because they've just always been there for these kids' lives, if those more ethereal elements like CGI, like social media, like a follow, a subscription, if those things are more visceral and real to kids these days than they are to people like us,
Yeah. I will ask my daughter. I'll see how, I have to ask it, but not as a loaded question.
Sure.
And I'll have to figure out how to do that.
Why don't you just do like a I don't know, like a magazine or like photos, like which one's more real or what's cooler?
You could do that, or you can even straight up ask. You could say, what feels more real to you, a puppet or CGI? Because that's something now too for kids who've grown up with it and are used to it. CGI can look more lifelike. You can do a 1-to-1 person in CGI. So that would be an interesting question, just basically for me, is to ask the younger and younger generation that didn't have Sesame Street the way I don't know if it's still on or popular or not, but you're so inundated with with everything else now, I can't imagine it holds the same place in children's hearts that it used to.
Now, I think this may be a tangent, I don't know, but I think the biggest problem I've had in sci-fi with the ability to make anything that you can think of has been when they have decided to take, like in comic books, when they take a cloud monster, and decide that is the villain, because we can't get over the fact that it's a cloud, right? Sure. Even though in a comic book it leads danger. Green Lantern did that with the movie, Green Lantern movie that nobody likes except me.
I've never seen it.
It's not great, but it is cheesy, but I'll defend it always because people get mad that the movie's cheesy, and I'm like, the character of Green Lantern, his only weakness is the color yellow. So they make like a yellow bullet and shoot it at him, and that'll get him, but not a real bullet, right? It has to be a yellow bullet. That's his only weakness. I'm like, that is cheesy in itself.
Yes, it's very oddly specific.
But they made the big bad one of the big ones in the series, but they made him like it's a big ghost, like a cloud. So he has to go fight a cloud.
How does?
And that's the thing. Like, the technology wasn't even quite there. I think now
Did
it looks dreadful
a mask?
now, but he had a mask.
Well, that was good.
Well, I think maybe now you could look at something like if you saw Spider-Man: Far From Home. They kind of played with that a little too, where he's fighting illusions really for a lot of this. And
Doctor Strange kind of did that.
Yeah,
kind of fought a big cloudy thing.
Yeah,
they did it so much better. But I do think I do kind of also in that one was like, it's just nice when they have like if there's a person to fight or a big robot. It's just easier to fall into that danger.
And it's easier to see them as an enemy or a villain. Even if it's a monster or like an animal like Jaws. We ascribe human characteristics. We believe that Jaws is out to get these guys. Yeah, it's difficult to think of a piece of nature as out to get you. In the same way, like a piece of the environment. Even. Yeah. So
there's a Netflix show. Even we're not in that segment yet. It's not, but I'm not talking about it yet. But it's called The Rain.
Okay.
It's a Norwegian film, I believe. I get weird Netflix suggestions because I watched like one foreign film and then everything went down. It's called The Rain, and so it's subtitled and then dubbed, so you can do both or one. And it where the rain is acid, and so they are like trying to escape from that in the environment. Just speaking, it's the only environmental film I can think of.
Interesting. The Happening
series.
The Happening.
The Happening.
They run away from the wind, and it is ridiculous and terrible.
What?
Yeah, the wind is the premise of that. This was the darkest point probably for M. Night Shyamalan in terms of film. Well, Lady in the Water might have been darker, and Avatar: The Last Airbender, I never saw it, but this was in M. Night Shyamalan's very dark period. Yeah. And he starts with a really solid premise, which actually is based on a lot of scientific fact about how trees and plants actually talk to each other and will do things, to try to keep their environment in stasis, including things like plants have, created neurotoxins before to animals off of them. And so the basic premise is this takes it one step further. Humans are destroying the environment, and so the plants have rebelled and have produced this neurotoxin that makes you kill yourself. And so it spreads, as the wind blows, I guess, however they release this neurotoxin into the air, even though it's ridiculous because if it's just airborne, it naturally disperses into the air anyway. But science,
is the wind a character?
Not a character per se.
Like Gale from Frozen?
No, it doesn't have a name, and it doesn't have quite as charming a personality as Gale. But it does, there's the rustling of the leaves, and the wind picks up, and that's their adversary, basically. Okay. So it's terrible and dumb and doesn't make any sense.
One of my favorite bad movies of all time is The Day After
Tomorrow?
Yeah.
Yeah, the global warming one?
Yes.
I love that movie. I would argue that it's not even that bad.
What? they run from the cold, right? When the cold is chasing them, and they run to the library.
That makes no sense.
But it's gorgeous in that.
It is. Oh yeah.
I love all disaster movies. I'm in love with disaster movies for one, and the more epically bad it is, the more I. 2012, when John Cusack drives the car in under the building that is collapsing, and he just drives right through. Well, that's a gorgeous moment of cinema.
That movie just straight up jumped the shark in like the first 10 minutes. And yeah, it was beautiful. But Day After Tomorrow was the same way. The CGI was gorgeous, was absolutely incredible. Oh, yeah. And the human storyline in Day After Tomorrow was very compelling. I think more so than 2012. You know, you had really and good acting. You know, you had Jake Gyllenhaal and Dennis Quaid, so it's a solid cast. And again, the CGI for all the weather events was insanely big. And then you get to the wolves, and it was like, our budget ran out. Whoops. Or like, we gave this to the weather guys, and they don't really do animals.
The wolves. Everything died except the wolves. The wolves were like, no, I'm good.
And the wolves like turned evil. The wolves were like, we broke out. We got a taste for human blood, and we want more. We zombie wolves.
We're going to seek out kids hiding in libraries.
Exactly. There's probably tons of dead bodies to gnaw on all over the place, game everywhere, whatever. No, we want to gnaw on fresh children, please. Thank you.
Oh, wow.
Fresh children. It's the new white meat.
Samantha, do you not watch disaster films?
I don't know what you guys were talking about for the last 10 minutes.
I'm so sorry.
No, that's okay. I knew it too. I was like, it's going to be great having Jessi on here. And I definitely know there's going to be parts of the podcast where I'm just going to be like, because you guys will know.
What's your guilty pleasure, Samantha?
No, it's okay.
But what's your guilty pleasure?
What are yours? What are your bad movies?
I don't want to be embarrassed.
You're embarrassed by them?
I'll give you some.
You're a comedian. You can't be embarrassed by things.
I can totally be embarrassed. No, of course I can be embarrassed. It's
against the law.
Might make it even more hilarious. I don't know. No, but your disaster movie is your guilty pleasure? I saw, was it 2 years ago? A year ago, I saw Ghost Ship. Have you seen it?
That's a fun, good, bad movie.
Wasn't it? I think that might have been the best bad movie that I can recall seeing at this time.
That was a good
Other
one.
than when I was a kid, for whatever reason. Did we talk about this before? That one Weird Al Yankovic. Was it Weird Al Yankovic? UF something. It was a spoof
UFC.
of a.
No.
Yeah. Something.
UF.
I don't remember, but it was. I really should rewatch it now.
Clearly.
Because I had one slumber party with all of my friends, and I had created an itinerary of all of the things for us to do.
So
you had an
itinerary. The crowning jewel of all the fun activities that I planned for all of my friends to do at that young age. The crowning jewel was to make sure they all watched the movie and found it as hilarious as I did before we went to sleep. Nobody did.
That's all right. I crack myself up over things all the time. Like, I'm still laughing over the best series of tweets I think ever made, and no one else thought was that funny. Which was I have a Twitter following. One of the things about having a Twitter following is you have to maintain it. So you got to tweet every couple of days at least. And so it was a Friday, and I was like, I have nothing clever or topical to tweet today. So I just wrote it's Friday, and it got a handful. It's not as many as the week before when I couldn't think of what to say. So I said, like this because I said so, and it got like 200 likes inexplicably. So this one, it's Friday. I got like 20 or 30 or something like that. And the next day, I was like, what am I tweeting? And I was like, what would be brilliant? I retweeted that, and I wrote, well, this aged poorly.
Nice.
Thank you.
That is funny.
I like it.
Right?
I need to find it and like it.
Thank you. I feel
I'm
very
not on
validated.
Twitter very much, but
that's okay. It's a terrible. I'm gonna go to start fights and get new followers.
There's a comic in San Francisco, Matt. I want to say Gerber. Trying to blanking on his name. I think it's Gerber. He did this great, like with the coronavirus. When everyone was dying every morning we'd wake up and there'd be more dead people, right? Mm-hmm. He wrote one day, do you ever feel like you're waking up to the beginning of Groundhog Day? And then the next day he wrote, do you ever feel like you're waking up to the beginning of Groundhog Day? And he did that for like a month.
That's incredible.
He just kept doing it.
That's incredible. I love it.
Like, and I was like, this is this is so brilliant. And you'd see who had been following him and who hadn't.
That's amazing. I have a super generic one. Generic is like one of the. I've probably written a grand total of like 3 jokes or joke related things during all of coronavirus, and one of them. It's a very just generic insult. So anytime you're roasting someone, just say, "I would call you a dildo, but dildos have a purpose." That's my new burn.
All right.
So feel free to use that one.
Yeah, that's a rhyme. You put it on a business card. Oh wait, a purpose-driven life. I don't think it was intended that way. But
I'm a dildo. I have a function. I have a very clear, distinct function, and I'm really good at my job. Okay. Cool.
So hey, let's we're gonna dive into hot topics here real quick. Got a few, if that's all right, unless
no, I was just gonna make another dumb joke. Please.
Okay. So baseball season is just started, a short season, and it's already over for the Miami Marlins, which I didn't know was a team still. But they're going to do a shortened game season because like 7 or 8 players tested positive for coronavirus.
I heard it was 12 between the staff and the players.
Okay.
No fewer than 12. And they got tested, got the results back, and still played the Phillies at their stadium, thus causing the Phillies to have to cancel their next.
For real?
Yeah. Yeah, like the day.
So they knew?
Yeah, they knew, and they were like, it'll be fine. And then they publicized it, and then, the team that was supposed to be coming to Citizens Bank Field in Philadelphia were like, we're not going to come. And they're like, yeah, we should probably cancel this game because our facilities are infected, and God knows how many of our players they coughed on. So
yeah,
that's the kind of responsible behavior I'd expect from Florida. So it's Florida, what can you say?
Yeah. I mean, do you think is there any sense in doing... Look, baseball is somewhat far away. There's only a few times you actually come into contact with people.
True.
Right? Is there any point of doing any sport then in the U.S. if we can't even do baseball?
Right, if you can't control baseball.
UFC.
They're
on an island.
That is on Fight Island.
WWE has been not a real sports sport, but they've been doing the Performance Center, and they have been having issues consistently with this. And the biggest problems you see, I don't know what the MLB has done with their players. Clearly, it wasn't enough. But I was reading things too, like the NFL, who is still trying to forge ahead with its season. Is not requiring players to be in any kind of isolation or quarantine. So the problem is like, if you're doing, I think that's like that's even said with the MLB too. It was like they're testing every other day, and they're still doing practices while waiting pending test results, or testing every 2 days, whatever it is. And in between, they're still socializing. They're going to practice. The testing doesn't do jack if you're taking a test, coughing all over everyone and then finding out 3 days later, whoops, I gave you all coronavirus. So. But the NFL... I'm
just baffled. I'm baffled.
As am I. Interestingly, similarly related to that news, though, the NFL and the NFL Players Association, which I'm not going to stake my life on this one, but from what I've seen recently, I know the NBA Players Association gets some pretty good pull with their league, but I know the NFL in recent years, the Players Association has become much more and more vocal and has gained a lot more power to the point where the deal they got from the NFL was players can opt out of this season if they are considered at risk, and that if they meet like one of these gajillions of criteria and it's confirmed by a doctor, they'll get a $350,000 stipend for this year. And if they are not at risk, if they just don't want to put themselves in that situation, they're still getting an $150,000 stipend. So that's a pretty sweet deal. It's also interesting because you can tell who likes playing for which teams, because a handful of teams one or two players have announced that they're not going to participate already. 6 or 7 players for the Patriots have already said, yeah, nope, not doing it. And I'm like, yep, that's it. Dude, get paid millions of dollars to play for Bill Belichick and not Tom Brady? Or take a massive pay cut to not have to deal with Bill Belichick for an entire season.
Wait, didn't he switch? Did he not switch teams?
Brady did. Belichick's still the coach.
Belichick didn't? Okay, I thought Belichick might be going.
Did he? I didn't think he was, unless I totally missed that.
No, it probably was. That's probably right.
Because I think that's sort of ramping up to have some weird, rivalry of who does, I think both of them want to prove themselves because both of their careers have been shadowed. Well, you ain't shit without Brady. Well, you ain't shit without Belichick. And I think both of them want to prove that neither is the case. And the reality is both is probably the case.
Well, and now it's tainted, right? It doesn't matter now.
True that.
Like everything's going to be tainted because whoever became victor or whatever, you'd be like, well, yeah, but coronavirus happened.
But it was a broken season, and let's be real. Tom Brady sitting on his ass for a year, he ain't gonna be able to play next year. That boy's got to keep up with his rigid cycle, or else his body just starts biodegrading.
his body will realize, like,
oh shit!
I'm allowed to not do anything. What?
He'll never do things ever again.
Okay. Also, big in the news here. Biden is supposed to be choosing his running mate next week. Allegedly, somebody did show a little memo, a little biography of Kamala Harris, saying she was chosen a couple weeks ago at August 1st to be vice president. So we don't know if this was an accidentally released bio, like of that he did choose her. But so that is out there. But any thoughts? Do you want to make any wagers on who he's going to choose?
I would guess that is not a spoiler from Kamala Harris. I would guess it's a pre-drafted bio. Yeah. But who was that? Was one name? It's someone I didn't really know. Susan Rice. Oh yeah, because she was from the Obama administration and whatnot. I know that she's been like one of the darlings, one of like the fast rising stars. Categorically, a lot of the times when when they pick the running mates, it's not usually like their number one contender in the primaries or even one of the major contenders. A lot of times they go outside that primary pool anyway and kind of pick somebody because you think, you got to see someone like Kamala Harris has a lot of stigma attached to her already because of the primary cycle. There are a lot of Democrats that love or hate her as a result. And so, but clearly not enough love her to catapult her to a nomination. So that's, you got to weigh your options of, okay, if her support was only during the primaries, how much does she really add to the ticket? Versus how many people does she turn off because someone got butthurt because she said a mean thing to their favorite candidate, 6 months ago and nobody cares anymore. So that's my money's on someone like Sue. Of any of the names, I'm just gonna pick Susan Rice because I think she's just has a high enough profile and enough, of a background that it's. Yeah. But also as a cabinet member, I don't know, is she been serving in an elected position since then? I don't think so.
No, I don't think she needs to. I don't think so either. Yeah. I
think that makes her more appealing. I think anyone serving in existing, first of all, depending on where they are, there's, you don't want to release vulnerable seats in the Senate, for example, or in the House. And then again, if someone has already served or has recently served in an elected position, they're a lot more polarizing because let's face it, we live in the most polarizing times I can remember. And someone who's been out of the spotlight for several years, who hasn't been, in an elected position, doesn't have a constituency that, in equal measures love and want to tear her apart, I think is a safer bet. I would say I would pick her as a safe bet.
Interesting. Samantha, any wagers? Do you know who's running?
I think Trump is still running. I heard Kanye wasn't anymore. You know what? I saw the thing and I just thought, am I supposed to care about this? I'm sorry, like I don't want to be like a jerk or anything, but like just I don't have a say right now. So just tell me who I can vote for already. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. Because I don't have that many of
this is
to keep giving away right now.
Right.
I'm like, it's I sure hope it's a great candidate, somebody that we can get behind that'll just package that up even better. I'm hoping for that, but I just can't.
Yeah, see, I've always been a little political file. I really love. I follow politics. I followed every presidential election closely. This is such a hard one to run because they can't do speeches. I mean,
Yeah.
which is to Biden's benefit. The less he can talk.
Honestly, yes.
Like
that
he
is
really needs to,
true.
keep him away from a crowd is ideal. But
there's nothing. I don't know if you've noticed, like the news, like the Trump
there's
picking
nothing to
apart
talk
Biden
about.
has gone down so much because there's nothing for him to say. There are no flubs. There's no foot and mouth, moments. There's nothing for him to, there's nothing for Trump to misspell a tweet about.
But you can't go like. Usually you go, oh, they're going to meet with the Steelworkers Union or they're meeting with teachers today, and you get to hear whatever they're into. Now they can only do all these web things and half the country is like, well, where's he hiding? Where's Joe? Haven't heard from him. Like, motherfucker, I just watched him on TV today. He's at an interview. You're not paying attention. That's not his fault.
Wake the F up. Apparently there's the political version of the paparazzi swarming his house 24/7. So.
I don't know what I would do now trying to, this is, everything is so hard to do. No strategist has any, imagine being your job is to run elections and you're like, I know how to run elections. I can get candidates. And then this comes, there is no playbook. There's nobody has any idea what to do to run. Like,
you know who's going to set themselves apart though, and people I think who are probably going to rise in the ranks in this is everybody for the past several years needs a media manager, and those people who've been doing the media management, all the online PR and stuff, those are the people who are going to be like, pick me. This is literally all I do. And now all of your jobs don't matter. Only y'all treat me like nothing. Like, hey, go tweet this speech out. Go post this on the website. And y'all think I'm just some little intern. Nah, it is my turn to shine now. Yeah, this is my game. I think that's what you'll see. Actually, it's probably a really good time as a young person because I think young people probably get a lot of those jobs and are also, just by default of having more saturation with it, more tech savvy. So.
Probably especially I think it's probably harder to get into those a presidential thing because there's so many people are going to try to stop you. Too many crabs, trying to stop you from rising. But a congressperson, someone running for Congress right now, they could probably get a media manager all over.
Oh yeah.
And be like nothing ever's happened before.
Oh yeah. And they'll probably up their games in that respect. And I think actually a lot of older politicians are going to end up realizing the value of online marketing because they're going to have to. So they're going to have to hire people. They'll see results, I assume, from it. And it'll be an interesting. I wonder how it'll be interesting to see 4 years from now how this election and how it's run impacts the next election cycle.
I am very bothered actually by the fact that in 4 years. AOC still can't run for office.
I'm not.
You're not?
I really don't like her. So
you don't?
I have a lot of problems. She is honestly, for my most hated people in Washington right now, it's I'm not going to say it's like Trump and her, but honestly, she beats out some.
What did she do that bothered you so much?
A lot. The worst thing that she did for me personally, the worst thing that was personal for me was when she stuck by Ilhan Omar, and honestly the way that first Ilhan Omar's remarks obviously are worse because she made them. The whole anti-Semitic thing. I'm Jewish. It hit very close to home. The response, quite frankly, from AOC and then from the rest of the Democratic Party was, for a Jewish person, scary. It was very scary. It was incredibly scary.
Oh, boy. I did not know anything about this story.
It was so I don't want to bog down in years and years ago. So Ilhan Omar, she's a congresswoman from Minnesota. She's still her first term, I believe. And I don't know how many years have gone by. I don't know what happens in the world. But she's an immigrant. She's an immigrant or refugee specifically from Somalia. So, and she's Muslim. So she's a woman of color. She's Muslim. She's a refugee. And so the people, and AOC is one of them who, and that's one of my problems. There's a faction in the Democratic Party right now that equates oppression and virtue. And they're not synonymous. They're not even in the same ballpark. You can have terrible things happen to you. That doesn't make you a better person automatically. How you respond and how you conduct yourself does, And while I think for all intents and purposes, Ilhan Omar has done a great job of overcoming the hardships thrown at her and risen up to become, a congressperson in the freest country in the world, it doesn't excuse her her long history of anti-Semitism. And I understand things like the world that she grew up in. She probably grew up as a child inundated with these things, inundated with negative stereotypes about Jewish people. Anytime Jews were mentioned or came up, they were probably painted as the enemy, the devil, the people you killed to become more virtuous, etc. And so I understand that, but understanding that doesn't make it okay. It's like saying I can understand how a redneck who grew up in a trailer park in Alabama is racist. That doesn't excuse or permit their racism. And everyone just kind of gave her a pass. Everyone gave her a pass. AOC straight up stood up for her. She took it to the next level. That was the thing. She really took it to the nth degree in saying not only were Ilhan Omar's remarks not anti-Semitic, but anybody who says they are and anybody who criticizes Ilhan Omar is they themselves racist or just wrong and shouldn't be doing it, in deserving of censure.
What did she say?
She was tweeting against. So the first thing that caught people's minds when she had been elected that she tweeted was prior, and it was something about Jews pulling the wool over people's eyes and stealing their money, and she prays to Allah that people will wake up and realize what's happening, and so she's very anti-Israel. And this is the big problem. As a Jewish person, I've actually wrote a chapter for somebody's book about pop culture, all about this. Basically, the Republicans are the pro-Israel party. The Democrats have become the anti-Israel party for a variety of reasons. One is that the idea of being pro-Palestine is cool and caught on college campuses some years ago. And then the other thing is this polarizing world we live in. If your enemy believes in this, you must therefore be diametrically opposed ideologically. So the Democrats have become the anti-Israel party. They've become the no Israel's, to this, to that, to whatever. And look, there are very valid criticisms about how the Israeli government is run and the tactics that they use. There are also equal amount, and I would argue more, over the way. Actually, no, straight up, there are more with the way Hamas runs Palestine. Because the Palestinians, the majority of Palestinians, the majority of Israelis, they just want peace. They just want to get along. The Israeli government is very militant, and then Hamas, who is been the governing, in spite of all of their efforts to change that, has been the governing body for the Gaza Strip. Is a actual terrorist organization that the UK, the US, and several other countries don't recognize their authority because they do things like bring children onto their television shows. This is the difference. Yes, Israelis kill innocent Palestinians. Palestinians kill innocent Israelis. Israeli children aren't raised to believe that killing Palestinians will get them into heaven. I have seen footage of Palestinian little 7-year-olds reading poems on national TV on like a news program. Oh, look at this little boy who wrote this poem. And the poem from this child is about murdering Jews, and everyone's clapping and telling them how wonderful it is. And to me, the piece, I don't think either side is doing what's right, but to act like, oh, Israel's terrible, all their tactics are terrible, all of this is bad, yay, Palestinians, they're so oppressed, poor Palestinians, we need to fight for their rights and fight for this and fight for that, is to fundamentally ignore and misunderstand the actual issue, which is that the Israeli government has done horrible things to the Palestinian people. The Hamas has done terrible things to the Israeli people. The majority of people living in that country, Palestinians and Israelis alike, would really like to get along. Most of them on the day-to-day and their data interactions do get along and are totally fine with that. And with the U.S., with our meddling, with our polarization of the issue, got to be pro-Israel, got to be anti-Israel, is only exacerbating the problem and taking us further from a solution. And so Ilhan Omar is one of the fuels in the fire to be very anti-Israel. So last year she was speaking out about an a pro-Israeli super PAC that was. And on the nose, the language she used sounded very, okay, yeah, that totally makes sense. She's talking about, a lobbying group using their money to buy off politicians, that just sounds normal, right? But if you look at the language, and then also if you look at the history of anti-Semitism, those kinds of allegations are heavily entrenched in our history of that's the whole, the Jews, mystifying the world and buying off, using all of our greedy Jew money because we all have our bags of gold. Where's mine, damn it?
I don't see it in your bathroom.
It's not in the bathroom. That's for damn sure. I'm looking for it because I haven't found it. If you guys seen my Jew gold, please let me know. So that's the old stereotype is you use our Jew gold to, buy off the politicians and run the world. And so she made that remark and then people freaked out and she apologized. But in her apology, she stated that basically, all I was trying to say was that I just feel like if you're, pro-Israel and you're putting this money towards Israel and whatnot, then you just have a higher allegiance to a foreign country. You have a higher allegiance to Israel than you do the U.S. And that, to me, is actually the worst statement she made of all of them, because that is the most on-the-nose anti-Semitic thing. The Jewish people throughout the majority of our history have been denied citizenship from the countries that we've been a part of, the countries that we lived in. And, of course, until 1949, we didn't have our own country. Or was it 55 that Israel? When was the war? So it's in that area when Israel was officially founded and recognized. Prior to that, we didn't have a country, but we were denied citizenship on the basis that our Jewishness and our allegiance to the state of the idea of the state of Israel made us traitors effectively to the country in which we lived and therefore not deserving of being citizens and not deserving of equal treatment. So to me, that was the worst statement that she made. And she never apologized for that. People talked about it outside of that sphere. The Democrats then, under duress to address the anti-Semitism, drafted a censure of Ilhan Omar, which they then revised to be a general censure of anti-Semitism, which they then revised, and their final statement was just a vague and general censure of bigotry. And it was so, dialed back from what the actual cause and source of the hurt was. And then you look at that with things like the rising numbers of anti-Semitic hate crimes, and you hear, social activists always citing that. And they're always talking about that to say racism is alive and well. Black Lives Matter is important. All this stuff is important because racism is alive and well in this country today. But the part they conveniently ignore is the fact that the majority in those uptick in hate crimes are anti-Semitic in nature. And then you look at other things too. Like now in this past week alone, you've had Nick Cannon, Deshaun Jackson, he's a sports guy, and then I can't remember who the third guy was, but it was a former sports athlete who retweeted Deshaun Jackson, all making anti-Semitic statements. Ice Cube also making anti-Semitic statements that he has not apologized for whatsoever. Nick Cannon making a half-assed apology, but also posting things at the same time saying I'm completely right. And then you look at the response to these things, nothing bad happened to Deshaun Jackson. Nick Cannon lost a CBS show, but he's still a host on Fox's The Masked Singer. And so I'm sitting here as a Jewish person in the society that's we are trying to build a society that caters to the oppressed, that caters to people who have undergone hardship, who are minorities, who need protection because they're minorities under attack. There are 15 million Jews, give or take, left in the whole world. There are more gay people in this country than Jews in the world. There are more human beings, if you add up the populations of Chicago, LA, and New York, there are more people in those three cities than Jews in the entire world. And we are constantly coming under fire. There are barricades. There were barricades in front of a Chabad in my area, which is a very peaceful area. But there were stone barricades because they were afraid of a terrorist who might have driven an explosive into the Chabad via that. Those barricades had to be removed during the protests because people were very disingenuously taking pictures of the rock barricades covered in wire, and people were taking pictures of these and spreading them around and saying, "Oh, look, it's the Antifa people planting these rocks to do violence and to pander to the movement, to try to demonstrate, oh no, it's not, just for an ideological pandering moment." They removed those barricades. You're removing a physical piece of safety for the Jewish community to basically just for the sole purpose of making the protesters shining the protesters in a better light. And so these disparities, you can't help but notice them as they pile up over and over. And I'm only talking about the left, largely in this right now because, look, we all know the right has a long history of anti-Semitism. They can be as pro-Israel as they want to, but they still embrace senators who are Holocaust deniers. They embrace senators who perpetuate, Jewish conspiracy theories day in, day out. So I don't even need to touch that. They're terrible. But they're also on the nose with it. And there's something very scary as a Jewish person, if you look at one of our most recent tragedies, of course, was the Holocaust, in seeing how insidious it is when it's at that level. I came into the Trump presidency thinking this is the person I have to worry about. This is that, because those types of things, that type of sensationalizing rhetoric is how we ramp up to believing that it's okay to discriminate against a certain type of person. But now I'm watching it happen on the left, and I'm like, this is actually scarier. This is scarier. This is more insidious. This is harder to combat. Because you can't, because this whole thing, it's, if unfortunately in the climate of our culture right now, if a black person were to say something, horrifically, blatantly anti-Semitic to me on the street, and I were to just yell at them in response, not say anything racial or ethnic whatsoever in response, but just be mad at them in response, that's going to get memed. I'm going to get called a Karen. No one's going to care that whatever was said to me, whatever stereotypes were thrown at me, I'm going to get memed and called a Karen and racist because I yelled back at somebody attacking me. And
so here's the question I have on it. I have wondered why it does seem that if somebody is not pro-Israel, they get labeled as anti-Semitic, which can't you be isn't being anti-Semitic not tied?
No, and here's the problem, is exactly what you're saying, is that is the reality. That is the correct reality. You can be anti-Israel and still pro-Jewish. You can be pro-Israel and still anti-Semitic, as we see day in and day out from the Republican Party. But what I've seen more and more is people who are pro-Israel using that as an excuse to not give a shit what they say about the Jews because, I'm pro-Israel, so it doesn't matter. And yes, no, being pro-Israel is not being pro-Jewish. It is not the same thing. You're absolutely right. But in the same token, I have seen a lot, just as much on the other side, of people conflating being anti-Israel with being anti-Jewish in their own language. So I'm not anti-Jewish. I don't have anything problem with the Jews. But when I'm criticizing Israel, it's totally fine for me to use ridiculously anti-Semitic language. That's fine. That's what you see a lot of now. So while you're 100% correct, people are using it as a convenient excuse to not censor themselves or not, consider what they're saying.
Because I definitely will say that I don't bring up the topic of Israel at all, because I feel like if I do say anything negative, it does get, it's just going to put a label on me as being anti-Semitic. And I'm like, what? So I'm like, so I just say nothing about it. Because I think we've basically, the Western countries they blew the shit out of that whole thing. Just deciding what should be done after World War II for people.
Let's just drop their country into an already inhabited country in the middle of hostile people.
Yeah,
what could go wrong?
I'm sure it'll be fine. They'll work it out. Right?
It's idiotic. And the reality is, though, and I think that's terrible, from what I've experienced, too, though, the people who are going to brand you anti-Semitic for being anti-Israel are not necessarily Jewish people. They're actually going to be a lot of the time, what is happening, the people who are going to yell at you and say you're anti-Semitic are people who are pro-Israel, are people who that falls into their ideology, and they're probably pro-Israel because, their orange supreme leader tells them to be, and whatever politicians they like and follow tell them to be. And so if they hear somebody being anti-Israel, they say, well, you hate the Jews. There's a lot of false. So I'll speak to the right as well a little bit, since, I lambast to the left. So turnabout's fair play. There is a lot of that happening on the right. That's what you're seeing a lot all the time now, is that people, they're going out and going like, oh, you said this anti-Semitic thing. They're quick to jump on that. Oh, cancel you. You're anti-Semitic. You're terrible. And they go and, like a tweet about, the Jews taking over the world and stuff and retweet that shit in their private life too. So it's
I guess the same point, if I say anything to some people, criticizing the president means you're un-American.
Which is ridiculous.
If the president's white, I should say. If the president's white and you say something critical, it's anti-American. Where it's like, well, that doesn't have anything to do with whether I'm happy to be in a, as a black person, being an American is a very complicated relationship. Like of being, I feel like being like, oh yeah. Sometimes I'm like, oh, I'm a proud American. Sometimes if I don't think too hard, if I just think about some of the things I get to do. In my past, I was I was very always anti. My dad was a hippie. He grew me to very much protest the man, right? Yeah. But I did visit Russia for 2 weeks when I was in high school as a sophomore, and it did flourish a degree of patriotism in me, of going like, oh my gosh, I see what other people are having to deal with, and everything I've read. It was like, oh, I'm just glad to be an American. I'm just glad to be an American now. Maybe, sure, 30 years before would have been hellish for me.
I still would rather probably be an American than a Russian right now, but
yeah. I mean,
I think we all agree on that.
But a lot of people can't understand why, though their family sucks. So I don't know why they don't understand it. Like how we can be like, no, I can be glad I'm an American and not be happy with my government or the social choices 50% of the country's making, but I can still Seattle's still my bubble, right? It's a bubble. It's in America. Can I love Seattle without loving America?
I guess. I feel very, it's funny because actually my opinions on America, having obviously a very, very different background than you, are actually very similar. It's the same. It's like I can love parts of America. I can love being American in some perhaps lost, more optimistic sense of the word,
Yeah.
And the thing that always grounds me that I love is I was just in Sequoia National Park yesterday because I have the luxury of being able to drive there from in 5 hours from where I live, and standing amongst trees that are thousands of years old and mind-blowingly gigantic, and you go do that, and then this weekend I'm going to be in a two-hour drive from where I live. I'm going to be in Joshua Tree, and I'm going to see the weird trees and the moonscape rocks and all that, and like that's all in this state alone, and I've driven around the country. I've traveled different parts of the country, and like the physical beauty, the majesty, and then the diversity is when you're driving around too and seeing different people from who look different, who sound different, who eat different foods, who say have funny different expressions, have different routines, different speed of life, all that stuff. Those are the beautiful parts of America. The basic, to me, I always land on that. It's like that, the natural beauty and the actual day-to-day people, because I've sat down and had many conversations recently. It's a lot of what I do with people that I vehemently disagree with, including Trump supporters. I actually have a very good friend who is a unnecessarily diehard Trump supporter. And that has been eye-opening for me in a big way too, to see that it's also not that black and white, as well, your ideas are problematic and your opinions are problematic and this, but then there's a peeling back for the layer further of yes, your ideology needs reworking because it's very archaic and not applicable to most people, but if you peel that away, your actions speak differently. And I think there's a middle ground, there's a type of person who will say things that aren't kind about gay people, let's say. But if they ever have if their child brings a gay friend home for dinner, they're everything, they're completely respectful, totally nice, and like the person. Don't even turn around and when they're gone and, talk shit about them, but they genuinely like the person. I think that's a middle ground we have gotten really comfortable lumping in with the other side. And I don't like that. And I think I've seen that side. I've allowed myself to see that side more and more because I come from a place of having gone to a very liberal arts college. I graduated in 2013 and seeing some of the really extreme versions of social justice that really turned me off because they were not about inclusivity and progress and building unity. They were about factioning and labeling and othering and marginalizing. And so looking at that and being able to see that nuance and say, look, I believe that social progress is the right way to go. I believe that more equality, more opportunities for disenfranchised people, examining how our world, our society puts certain people at a disadvantage for things like skin color is important. while also saying, yeah, but these people saying those things, I can't. And so having that nuance allowed me to sort of look at the other side and say, well, there's that there too. And there has to be a willingness to, I think people got a really, really hard line of like, if you don't think exactly what I think, you're wrong. Or if you have this one little opinion that doesn't fly with me, everything you do and say is wrong. And when we do that, we basically close ourselves off from the possibility of ever having progress. Because as you rightfully pointed out, 50% of America is on one side, 50% on another. And if 50% here, which is what's happening, say, we're moving on to our better world and we screw you, you don't have a place in it. Even when people are like, well, what about me? They're like, no, you don't have a place in it because you're problematic. And the other side, people saying, we don't want your better world. We don't want you in it. All the rhetoric you get from the White House about acting like the Democrats are somehow not also his people that he's supposed to be ruling.
Yeah.
And then you lose the sense of we're all Americans on the same journey going the same place together. We need to open up the bubble that's the center, which is actually one of the reasons I supported Pete Buttigieg in the primaries. I wanted a more moderate candidate, not necessarily because it matched my social views perfectly, but because I think we need somebody who represents more of that part of America that honestly feels very left behind by both extremes, and feels very lumped in and attacked by one side or the other for either not being right enough or not being left enough. I come to this as a person who has been accused of both being a social justice warrior and an alt-right person, which neither of which is remotely true, both of which are horrifically absurd, the alt-right probably more so, but simply just not for falling in line with what other people say, or for liking somebody in spite of whatever their flaws may be that I'm not supposed to. And you lose an opportunity to have conversations, to learn new things, and to grow. And without that, it's just going to be a zero-sum game where this 50% says, no, we're going this way. Screw you guys. You're not a part of it. This 50% says, no, we're staying right here. Screw you guys. We're not coming. And because you have such monoliths on either side, nobody's ever going to get anywhere unless we just say, okay, draw a line down America, or Democrats go here, Republicans go here. Everyone else who doesn't really want to be affiliated with this, just, I don't know, live in Wyoming. I'll go to Wyoming. It's fine. It's a beautiful place. I just don't want to get that overpopulated. So, and we're missing the fact that if we all want to move anywhere together, more than 50% of us need to be on board.
Yeah.
I feel like we've lost. People aren't interested in learning or changing or growing. They're just interested in being right and being validated.
Dr. Phil once said, he's awful, but my ex-wife used to like him, like occasionally, until I started repeating what he said to her, and then she didn't like.
Awesome.
I was like, Dr. Phil said, I was just like, son of a, and then we stopped watching it. He said he would talk about somebody. Are you fighting? He would talk about people fighting to be right rather than to
fighting for something.
Even engage for the conversation.
And I think that's what our society is. It's fighting to be right.
And then Mike Birbiglia taught me from one of his specials. Right? He said he'd rather be with Jenny than right. Right? He decided to stop fighting. Like he realized he didn't need to fight just to be right about something. Mm-hmm. That it was okay just to maybe be wrong or not, or be quiet and have love instead.
Exactly. I went through that with my boyfriend. We both tend to like to be right, and for a period after he first moved in, we were arguing more and more. And it was because both of us would dig our heels in on something. And even it was the kind of thing where even if the other person would concede, we'd find something new to be mad about. Like, okay, well, that's fine, but this, because we were more interested in being the person who was right and being the person who was and would not also, and then refused on either side to cop to what we had done. Okay, well, you could have said that differently. And then we finally realized it was like, all right, well, you did this thing that was hurtful. I could have responded better. And now we came to that same conclusion. We'd rather be happy and together than right and alone.
You know what you made me think of right now, too, is, I forget how it was said, but just when you're having an argument with another person and there's all this history, how a lot of times, because people let things build, that they're bringing up stuff from the past, and it's like, no, we're talking about this one moment right here. And yes, the other things may feed into it, but it's like, let's solve this thing here right now that we're talking about. And it definitely seems to be obviously an issue in the greater American family of whether or not people want to acknowledge we're all family or not.
True.
But when one person is hurt, yeah, but you did this to me or you did that to my parent. Well, yes, but right now we're talking about this. And if we could just fix one thing at a time to unravel it instead of keeps getting more and more knotted up.
Mm-hmm. I think you saw that like with the Women's March was a great example of that when that was kind of going on, like the Me Too movement. It was like, it kind of all started with this national conversation about consent, which was really good and important. Of like, yeah, silence. It kind of started with silence isn't consent, which blew my mind when that, became more and more put out there. That's like, why do we have to rewrite laws so that people understand that? That blew my mind. I was like, this was clearly a conversation we needed to have, because that's a problem. And then it just explored other areas of, consent under inebriation and consent in different situations and, consent in the moment versus under duress and things like that. And that was cool and that was all good. And then we sort of came into this like, okay, well, the wage gap and the Me Too movement and the National Women's March and all these things. And you're like, okay, what are we actually doing anymore? Are we trying to oust sexual predators in Hollywood? Are we trying to oust every sexual predator in the world ever? Are we trying to fix the wage gap? Are we trying to fix institutional sexism? Like,
yes,
what's going on?
All of those things.
Yes, but as you said, when you have the momentum of a movement, it's one thing at a time.
It's hard when you look at
right now, the protests recently have stayed. It's getting a little vague now, but for a lot of that momentum was very channeled and geared towards let's reform the police. Mm-hmm. And if it stays on that, you'll see those changes, I think. That's something I was really pleased about, even though it didn't get nearly the same amount of press after it feels awkward to say pleased about anything in relation to this case because it was so horrible. But Ahmaud Arbery, the next step was Georgia revisiting their citizen arrest laws almost immediately within a week or two of this happening. I don't know if anything good actually came of that, if they actually changed them, but the Georgia government, their response to all the protests was to revisit the citizens arrest laws, which is arguably the thing that led these guys to feel emboldened to run this guy down. Yeah. And I'm like, that's good, but then we lose focus. I think what ends up happening. I hope it doesn't happen in this case. Like I said, this one has been the rare instance. Occupy Wall Street suffered from the same thing, a lack of specific focus and needs.
Yeah, no, I think we as Americans like goals, which is why I think we like football more than other sports, is because we like situational sports, like where there's a
progress.
third down, 12 yards to go, yes. Bottom of the ninth, 3 runs down, 2 balls. 2 strikes. Like we like these situational. We don't like soccer where it's like everything's going on goal, like out of nowhere. Like what? I think the early civil rights movements were being able to focus on the vote.
Yeah.
Or focus on we should be able to eat at these counters. Exactly. The same. We gave a very specific thing.
Yes.
That would trickle down to a lot of other things. Mm-hmm. But they were able to focus on these very specific things. And I do think if we keep the eye on the prize of police reform, it'll help with other things.
I wish that the name was completely different.
What?
And,
police reform?
I wish that instead of it saying defund the police, it said police reform. Because I've definitely had to explain it to a few people. Like, we're not saying get rid of the police. Yeah. And I think I mentioned John Oliver. I know I've mentioned him on the podcast, but he had a really brilliant way of putting it out and showing like everything the police have to do. And how about distributing some of that money to other teams or social workers or whatever, like other jobs and people that also can be helping so that things aren't escalating. So
I'm actually hugely in favor of the phrase defund the police because I've heard the phrase police reform since the Rodney King
it doesn't
riots.
have to be police reform. I'm totally not.
Right.
I don't have a better name. Yeah. I'm just saying that I have seen that name turn people away from
Yes.
it who I actually know are for it.
And the other thing is, yes, I agree, and I have met a lot of people who are for it, who end up spreading it poorly because they have misunderstood it to be that. Just get rid of the police right now, tomorrow, get rid of them, we don't need them, and have propagate that as the idea. And yes, other people who are heavily turned off by that verbiage. And I think that goes back to what I was saying about needing to bring people on board. Because the reality of defunding and abolishing the police, the idea behind that is let's reform our communities. Let's reform where the governments are putting the monies in the communities to create the safety nets and the social programs that mean we don't require a police presence. But I agree when you say defund, people then can build straw man arguments very easily against it. And I had another point with that, and I totally forgot where I was going with it.
I feel like we've never been able to. We have never discussed what the police should and shouldn't be doing until we said defund them. And now we are actually discussing what they should and shouldn't do. And the whole purpose is to get that conversation going. And nothing has ever worked until they said defund them. And they go, we can't defund them. They do all this stuff.
Okay, I mean, that's a great. That is an. I do agree that it is absolutely very catchy to get people's attention.
Sure.
I just wish that there was another phrase along with it that could help get them. Like that one's great for getting your attention.
Like if it had a subtitle with it, defund the police, refund your community. Something like that.
Oh, that's cool.
Because
it'd be great if people to care enough to ask and not just immediately like, they're on. You know what I mean? And
true.
Yes, people are going to do what they're going to do, but also words and ideas can still change the world.
It's true. No, it's true. You say that like you're embarrassed. It does not sound naive or optimistic.
It wasn't. I know. I was like, it's not my quote, and I hope I'm getting it right. Yeah, Robin. Right, Robin's quote.
Okay. Yeah. Hey, we got to move on here.
Sorry,
but no, it's okay.
Take full responsibility.
Just a quick. The one other topic we were going to touch on hot topics, but we'll just kind of skim through real quick. So the 2020 Emmys were released. Apparently, the nominees. I had no idea. That's how not into things. But a couple highlights that I wanted to point out that were really interesting. Of best comedies and best drama, I believe there was only one broadcast television show.
Yes, The Good Place. The Good Place,
which is excellent.
It's an excellent show. I still haven't seen the last season, but it is.
Oh my God, it's such a good show.
No spoilers.
And The Mandalorian, marking the first Star Wars ever to be nominated for an Emmy. I believe
it is the
single tear I see from your eye.
Yeah,
probably. Listening, single tear.
Now you hate Disney Star Wars, so
but
you
not
like
The Mandalorian. I do like The Mandalorian.
Do like Mandalorian.
I do really, really enjoy that show. Okay, it's not perfect.
I was gonna block you, but I'm not.
Wait, so could I watch it? Do I have to catch up on all my Star Wars stuff before I watch it?
No, you can watch it. I think
you don't. It will enhance your experience because you'll understand the world a little more, but you can 100% follow the characters in the story. There'll just be some moments, aha moments that you won't get because you don't have the context. But you can definitely follow the show without and enjoy the show without having seen the rest of it.
There's a lot of things that I've questioned that. Even I was listening to this podcast about two people who are watching Star Wars for the first time. They're two comics. I'm blanking on who it was. And they hated Star Wars, the first one.
Yeah.
And then they saw Empire Strikes Back and were like, okay, a little bit. Their favorite was Return of the Jedi. But it did make me question the whole idea of me feeling everyone needs to watch Star Wars first, right? It did make me I know it's not. I'm I guess it's not as exciting as things are used to now. And I do remember, I did get a number of things spoiled growing up, but then I would go back because if I really loved that world, in say Star Trek, I'd go back and watch the other things to get a fuller experience, and then I would know. Yeah. And I think I too often try to put my experience, I try to get someone to repeat the way I did it.
And that's a great point. Yeah,
it's hard not to do that with things that you really love. Like at my slumber party,
Exactly. We
But
don't
I've
do
definitely
it.
done that with my nieces too, like with certain movies that I really, really loved when I was younger. And like just, oh, you're so excited to share it with them. And sometimes they have that same excitement, but most of the time they didn't because there's
I've
a
had
whole
the
other slew of
problem.
things they've seen first.
Oh my god, my boyfriend he saw Gladiator once and like a long time ago and doesn't really remember. It was like at someone's house. He didn't really pay attention. It's one of my favorite movies of all time. I have now talked about it so much that he is sick of it, having not yet seen it. So now
What
I
movie?
need to Gladiator.
Oh,
So now
good.
I need to not. It's so good, but now I need to like not talk about it for a month or two, and so that he forgets about the fact that he's irritated about talking about it, and then we can sit down and watch it, and it'll be fine. But it's
That's a good
Are you
plan.
not entertained?
Is this not why you were here? Oh, it's so good. It's
That's a good
so
movie.
good. I love that. That's like probably it's like Star Wars, Lord of the Rings, Gladiator. That's kind of my trifecta.
So good.
And speaking of good movies, move into the movie review section here. I've got 2 movie reviews this week. Okay, here's my quest to be a press pass movie reviewer. Okay, the first one, it just released on Sunday. It's called Banana Split. It's on Netflix. It actually came out technically it first aired in 2018. It was like a just for festival release. Then it had a minor release in March. Then I think something happened. I don't know what. That didn't allow it to keep going.
Oh boy.
But and then so now it's really released on Netflix just this past Sunday. The log line on it, Banana Split, rated R, 1 hour, 28 minutes. It's a comedy. Over the course of a summer, 2 teenage girls develop the perfect kindred spirit friendship with one big problem. One of them is dating the other's ex. So, yeah. Now, it's a good setup. It's not secret that one of them's dating. These 2 meet at a party. They know who each other is, but they are kindred spirits, and it's a great story of a friendship between the 2 characters, April and Clara. And it's kind of weird for me to watch like some of these good films that are about a couple of like they're teenage girls, and I'm like, well, I don't relate to this, but I can relate to wanting this kind of friendship, and they have a great connection like between the 2 and like of good friends. And it's kind of wonderful in a lot of the scenes that they both know, oh, my friend's dating this ex who I'm not over. And that underlying tension in scenes that they're being happy together is kind of wonderful. Because there's not like, it's not a movie. It's a coming of age story. So like, I think a lot of times the big conflict is something underneath a lot. And that's what it was for this. Noting it's written by one of the actors in it, Hannah Marks. She's one of the writers for it. And she can't be, I haven't looked her up actually, but she can't be much older but she's born in 93. So that's
my sister's age. She's 26 or 7.
Is that even that old? Oh yeah, 27. So
yeah, my sister turned 27 this year. Yeah,
she wrote it 4 years ago. Well, she's got
it's pretty cool.
Got a young face.
What's the name of the film again?
Banana
Split.
I'm gonna check this out.
Sounds delicious.
It is I do recommend it. It got a kind of low rating on IMDb. I was kind of surprised. I did like it. Is that not shocking?
That just sounds like some young girl stuff right there, though. Like, I don't know if you experienced it, but I definitely experienced where if a friend of mine and I liked somebody at the same time, even if I liked them first, neither one of us would go near them. It's probably part of why I was single for so long. That would be a very uncomfortable friendship. But they're close. But I'm just thinking of the story. I'm like, yeah, I bet there's some stuff in there.
Well, but it's a wonderful little friendship. Like, it's unexpected.
Yeah.
You don't expect them to become friends the way it's set up, because it starts off that you think it's just going to be a little teen sex comedy kind of thing, and it's not. But I do for some reason enjoy stories about like the senior year of high school where people are about to go off in college, because I think that's the last year of freedom really in your life.
Yeah.
And
It's also so interesting to see and to remember, because I feel like it always puts you back in those shoes to remember like what was important to you then, because you're transported back into these worlds of like, and I was 18 and I ruled the effing world and I was a senior in high school. I was so free and these were the most important things in my life and this is what I thought my life was going to be. I think it's so interesting to go back, put yourself back in, because you get transported back there and you're like, and then you wake up and you realize, nope, I am just however old I am. I've done absolutely nothing of note with my life.
Yeah.
This is great.
I see you got super excited when Silas said that even if he like couldn't really relate to them, he could relate to wanting that kind of friendship, and you had a big reaction.
I love that sentiment because we don't have that right now. We are so in this other mindset as people, no matter who you are. We are so casual. I mean, you can't miss what's going on in Hollywood with the same kinds of things. And that's side of we don't get into gigantic topic on that too. But the big thing is like in Hollywood, you have to be gay to play gay. It's a huge thing right now. And the part of that I thought recently too was like the thing you always look at is like, well, but what about how you can relate to those experiences? When I was younger, I'm not and have never been gay, but like I say, I've never been. I was gay when I was younger, but I experimented when I was younger, but I landed pretty much on the dick side of things. And one of my favorite albums was a Melissa Etheridge album, and all of that pain and feeling of being trapped that for her stemmed from being gay at a time where it was even less acceptable in the Midwest. All of the pain she got from that, and that sense of being trapped and that sense of not being able to be who she was is what resonated for me as a kid. So a lot of that actually was interesting for me, like growing up as someone who always felt outcasted, who always felt misfitted, but for very different reasons. I related to a lot of But I'm a Cheater was another one. Loved that movie. I related to the gay stories, the queer stories that were told about not feeling like you could be yourself, not feeling accepted for being yourself, being cast out of society, having to try to find people who accepted you for who you were. All of those really deeply resonated with me, even though I'm not that, I don't live that way. Or like it was so funny when you talked about your experiences, how you looked at America, and like I'm obviously not black and I've never had those experiences and I don't know what those are like, but that we've come to a lot of common ground in our worldviews based on vastly disparate experiences. And I think people forget that so much today, and you see a lot of this too on the other side. There's a lot of this fear of other. There's a huge fear of other, from the more conservative faction of the country, and it's just this total blindness to the fact that I think that when people rail against immigration, they've never actually looked an immigrant in the eye and understood that that's a person. They see a different skin color, they hear a different language, and they go, that's not even human. We're so comfortable dehumanizing people. Yeah. But and that's kind of the point I was making earlier about talking to people like Trump supporters, but also that talking to people who are different, who've had different walks of life, and finding that sameness. So I actually want to watch this movie because that's what I think we need more of in our storytelling right now. We need stories about every kind of person. We need representation for every kind of person. But those themes in those stories, those overarching themes, need to be those universal ones we relate to. The reason why Star Wars has so much staying power, 40 plus years later, is for the universality of some of the experiences, the universality of the human experience. One of the reasons why Star Wars was so accessible, where so many other sci-fi movies weren't, because Luke was a farm boy. Because in this galaxy far, far away, with aliens and spaceships and traveling at the speed of light, you had a 17-year-old farm boy, senior in high school, who just was wanting to go out and explore the world and grow up. And that it very much is, Luke's journey very much is a coming of age story in the beginning. And that universality of the human experience, of the growing pains, of those things, that's what bonds us together as people, as Americans, as humans. And those are the things I think we need to focus on, and I look at that, we can do both things. We can not be content with what we have. we can fight for having something better. We can acknowledge the problems and the things that we do have while simultaneously being grateful for what we do have and what is good, and being grateful for the people in our lives, and grateful for our differences that make us unique and special, and grateful for our similarities that all make us human. And that is my closing monologue.
Yeah. Okay.
Good.
The other movie I did want to suggest real quick. It came out a little bit ago. It was in the theaters, in and out. It kind of bombed, to be honest, in the box office. It's called My Spy. It's now streaming on Amazon Prime. And the description of it is that 9-year-old Sophie catches JJ, a hardened CIA operative, spying on her family during a routine surveillance operation. In exchange for not blowing his cover, JJ begrudgingly agrees to show the precocious girl how to become a spy. What at first seems like an easy task soon turns into a battle of wits as Sophie proves you don't need much experience to outsmart a seasoned agent. And I will tell you, I almost didn't even bother watch it because the moment I ever see, like, if I see a kid on the cover and it says spy, I'm like, this is not going to be good, right? It's got to not be good. Dave Bautista was like a little interesting to me. I was like, he's just going to be Groot, right? Or not Groot, Dax. Drax. But I was like, you know what? I need to watch a movie. I need to get a movie, so I'm going to watch this. Me and my daughter watched it, and she wasn't even like, she's like, fine, whatever. We laughed so hard through this movie. I couldn't believe it. And my wife commented on it. She's like, it was so great hearing you two laughing the whole time. Like, okay, he is really, Dave Bautista is so funny. Like, he knows what he looks like. He knows how he comes across, and he knows how to deliver things, in a dry sense of the way to make them funny. And what I didn't know from any of it, because I don't think I even watched a trailer for it. Kristen Shaw is in it. Do y'all know Kristen Shaw from Daily Show and then other?
I watched this movie, so I'm just like mentally, who was she? Okay, yes, she was that.
Kristen Shaw is so damn funny in everything she does, right? Like, she made Last Man on Earth, that TV show. Like, everything. She's always just so funny, and there's not a scene in here that she doesn't get a laugh that she's in. She's delightful. So we're cracking up at her. We're cracking up at Batista. Yeah, the story's a little, you can see where he's going. Yeah, the daughter's going to try to do something here, and there's some plot points that are, you have to stretch to buy it that it happened that way, but they do pretty much kind of get you there. Like, they get you to agree to it and accept it. And I just couldn't get over how funny it was. And so I was kind of shocked to see how low it got.
Yeah.
Well, did it help me transcend the understanding of the human condition? No. Did I feel like I was watching Shakespeare and watching some verbal acrobatics? No. But I had a wonderful time watching this with my daughter, and I would absolutely recommend this film for people to watch because, like, I did laugh, and I don't think it was because my daughter was there. I think I would have been laughing out loud anyway. I think the comedy was on point. I haven't decided. I'd have to watch it again to decide if it was the writing itself that was funny or if they wrote it so well for these actors
to know some of that. I mean, Batista has a sense of, and you have to remember, Batista, you're coming from pro wrestling also. That is performance. That is a lot of acting in that too. But yeah, no, I've been surprisingly impressed with him. I felt very similar about the film. It had some a lot of really funny moments. Yeah, it's not earth shattering. The plot's pretty pedestrian. You're going to follow along from A to B. But yeah, it was a very charming movie. I think some of the rating though, because so if I remember correctly, this was one of those movies that got advertised heavily like a year or more ago, but must have gotten pushed back. I think it got pushed back because it came out right before everything shut down for coronavirus.
Yeah, you know what? I see the first trailers dropped for this in April of 2019.
Yeah, and I think it was originally supposed to come out like that fall.
Okay.
But
Something
it
happened.
must have gotten pushed back till March, and then it had a March release, but it was like, or February, might have had I think it had a February release right before stuff shut down, so it never even got its full theatrical run. And yeah, so it definitely suffered because of that. I have a super short recommendation with a very even shorter synopsis.
Okay.
But Hulu just put out an original film, I believe, called Palm Springs. That we checked out. It's Andy Samberg, and I forget the name of the actress, but she's been in stuff. And then J.K. Simmons actually has a fun part in it too. And really, all you need to know about it is that it is a retelling. Well, I don't say retelling because it's not trying to be that. It is a modern Groundhog's Day. And
cool.
that's all. But the only thing I'll add is that it does add stuff, because I know like Happy Death Day did sort of the same time loop, premise and whatnot. I will say Palm Springs adds dimension that I have not seen explored in time loop, genres.
And is it on Hulu?
It's on Hulu, yeah.
Okay.
And Andy Samberg, it was interesting because that was like sort of a big step for him as, sort of like the comedic guy, supporting guy, to stepping into this like more serious. It's comedic, it's funny. It's there's a lot of really dry, dark humor in it, but and some less dark, just really funny shit. And sorry, I should have asked ahead of time if I can swear.
Yeah, you can.
Okay.
Yeah.
I usually
it's a requirement.
Good.
We have a certain quota of swear words that we have to meet for our pandemic episodes.
Good. On YouTube, I can't say fuck until we're like 15 minutes in now. Otherwise, it's like that's the way monetization is. It's like, oh, you can swear, just not in your intro. So it's like, what's the intro? After 15 minutes, I'll drop F-bombs.
Oh.
No, it's just
to know.
Palm Springs is like a great, okay, it's Saturday afternoon in the summertime. We would be going to the beach. What should we do? Stay in and watch Palm Springs.
Yeah.
Definite. But also, if you've ever seen Wrist Cutters: A Love Story, which is a random niche film that you probably haven't seen. But for those listeners out there who have seen Wrist Cutters: A Love Story, it has a similar vibe. So that means nothing you haven't seen.
I'm really into time loop and time travel stories, so I may try to get into
I
this.
saw it, and I was planning to watch it at some point just because he was in it.
Yeah.
But now I have more of a reason to.
But Samantha, going after your Jewish boys? Is that what's up?
Shh. They're so beautiful.
I know. It's true. That was big.
So, Jessi, you have a YouTube channel.
I do.
Right?
Yes.
Is that Nerd Wars, or is that different?
No, it is Mindless Entertainment. Is my
Mindless Entertainment. Oh, okay. Hey.
Yeah,
Look
no,
at you
Nerd
promoting.
Wars. Nerd Wars is a show I've been on a little bit on Andy Stignell's channel, Popcorn Planet. So I have appeared on Nerd Wars, but no, my channel is Mindless Entertainment. I am pimping myself. You can find me there. Actually, technically my live stream started 25 minutes ago. So.
Oh no! Oh geez. Okay.
It's fine. My audience is used to me being late.
Yeah.
So you can find me over there right now. Well, not anyone listening right now because this is going to be, this is not live. But I put up videos. I do rants. I do some sketches now too. I'm actually going to put out a music video later this week, and I'm on Twitter saying random silly things at Jessi Milestone, and then I'm on Instagram at Mindless Entertainment. And more importantly, follow my cat on Twitter, Shit Pancake. He's gonna have his name is Mal, but his name is Shit Pancake because he started knocking everything down one day, and we were mad, he broke something or whatever, and we were so, you're just such a shithead, you're a shit this, you're a shit crate, a shit pallet, a shit dumpster, a shit this, and Jeff just goes, you're a shit pancake. And that was just funny, and it stuck. We don't want to be mean, though. He's not a pancake made of shit. He's a poorly constructed pancake. So we call him Shit Pancake, and then I started creating a persona. So, Shit Pancake, he talks like this, he says stuff. He thinks endorphins are endorphins. He thinks it's an animal like dolphins, and they go, ah! And he loves making endorphin noises, because they go, ah! And he loves Mama Papa, and doesn't like when they go places. He doesn't like when they go away, for sure not. For sure not. He's got little phrases that he says and stuff, and so we'll lie in bed, and I'll just be Shit Pancake talking to Jeff, and Jeff will just talk back like he's talking to the cat. And at one point, we're like, we should just monetize this and make a YouTube channel. So that is my new project in the works.
That is awesome.
That's so cool.
So Shit Pancake.
But before we get out of here, we have 7 questions that we always ask our new guests. on the show. Okay, so here's your 7. Just your first thoughts. What are you most nerdy about?
Star Wars.
Person after my own heart. What's something that you love to eat?
Steak. Steak. Yeah, I love steak. Rare steak, grilled steak, steak, bacon, cheesesteaks. I'm from Philly, so cheesesteaks.
What's something that you love to drink?
I was say beer, but I actually stopped drinking. Bubble water. We're like addicted to seltzer water. We spend an unnecessary amount of our food budget every day on seltzer water.
What kind of music do you love?
Rock. Anything rock. Older or modern. This new indie shit doesn't count because there's no guitars in it. But hard rock, the Beatles. The Beatles are my all-time favorite band, but like some of my tops are like the Beatles, Nirvana, Breaking Benjamin, My Chemical Romance, and I feel like rattling those 4 off kind of gives you the scope of my interest in rock. And Sum 41, can't forget them.
What do you love to create?
Music and stories. I love creating any kind of, whether it's in a song, in a video, in a writing. I like creating stories, new stories.
What's a game you love to play?
Cards Against Humanity.
Okay.
And Halo.
And last question. In 100 years, when someone reads your biography, what do you want to be remembered for?
I want to be remembered for... wow. God, I haven't thought about that in a while. That's... what do I want to be remembered for? I want to... Whatever it is that I end up settling... I'm going to create many, many more things in my life, and hopefully some of those things will stick around. I would want 100 years from now, I will want to still be someone's favorite person, like someone who doesn't know me, and people who are not my contemporaries. I want people who are not my contemporaries to still care about my life and, my stories, the stories that I told.
Okay. Awesome. Jessi Milestone, thank you for coming on.
Thank you guys for having me. This was so much fun. Samantha, it was great to see your beautiful face.
I missed you. It's good to see you.
So much. This was a blast. And I will say, I cultivate a very bipartisan audience on my channel purposefully. And it was really nice to be able to be in an environment where I could say, fuck Trump, and not worry about, oh God, 50 of my viewers went away. Oh, fuck.
Oh, good.
Yeah. It's very relieving to be in a social situation to just be like, the things that I care about. And we all kind of fell in a very similar vein of like rational people who aren't insane about the things that I also believe in, but also believe in the same things I believe in. So it was nice. Thank you guys. Thank you for having me. It was truly an honor.
All right. Like and a half.
Live long and prosper and prosper and prosper.